I never thought I would become the kind of person who waged war against teenagers over a mailbox, but living in Sunridge Heights, Arizona had turned me into someone I barely recognized anymore. My name is Wesley Richardson, and I had been dealing with the most infuriating problem for 3 solid months. Every single weekend, without fail, someone was destroying my mailbox in increasingly creative and destructive ways. It started innocently enough back in March. I woke up one Saturday morning to find my mailbox door hanging open, the little red flag bent at an unnatural angle. I figured it was just kids being kids, fixed it with some pliers, and moved on with my life. The following weekend, the entire mailbox was lying in the street, the wooden post snapped clean in half. That cost me $80 and a trip to Home Depot to replace. The weekend after that, someone had spray-painted obscenities all over the new mailbox in neon green paint. Another trip to the hardware store, another $100 down the drain. By the time May rolled around, I had replaced that stupid mailbox 4 times. 4 times. The postal worker, a friendly woman named Margaret who had been delivering mail in Sunridge Heights for 15 years, started giving me sympathetic looks every time she drove past. The worst part was not knowing who was doing it. I lived on Saga Drive, a quiet cul-de-sac where most of the families had lived for years. Everyone knew everyone, or so I thought. The Homeowners Association in Sunridge Heights was run by a woman named Patricia Hendricks, and she was exactly the kind of middle-aged nightmare you would expect from an HOA president. Patricia had been president for 7 years, and in that time, she had made it her personal mission to micromanage every single aspect of life in our neighborhood. She sent violation notices if your grass was a 1/4 inch too long, if you parked your car facing the wrong direction, if your trash cans were visible from the street 15 minutes past collection time. She was relentless, petty, and seemed to derive genuine pleasure from making people miserable. I had received my first HOA violation notice 2 weeks after the mailbox vandalism started. The notice, printed on official letterhead and signed with Patricia's aggressive signature, informed me that my damaged and unsightly mailbox was in violation of community standards and needed to be repaired or replaced within 72 hours or face a fine of $100 per day. I actually laughed when I read it. Here I was, the victim of repeated property damage, and the HOA was threatening to fine me for it. I called Patricia immediately. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp and impatient. "Patricia Hendricks, HOA president." "Patricia, this is Wesley Richardson from 428 Saga Drive. I just received a violation notice about my mailbox." "Yes, Mr. Richardson. Your mailbox has been in a state of disrepair for several weeks now. The HOA standards clearly state that all mailboxes must be maintained in good condition and match the approved designs outlined in Section 12 of the Community Guidelines." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. "Patricia, my mailbox keeps getting vandalized. Every weekend, someone destroys it. I have replaced it 4 times already. I am not letting it fall into disrepair. Someone is actively destroying my property." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Have you filed a police report?" "Not yet, but I am planning to." "Well, Mr. Richardson, regardless of the circumstances, the HOA standards must be maintained. I suggest you resolve this issue quickly. The 72-hour notice stands." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone in disbelief. No sympathy, no offer to help, just a threat of fines. That was Patricia Hendricks in a nutshell. The next weekend, I decided to stake out my mailbox. I set up a folding chair in my garage with a clear view of the street, armed with a thermos of coffee, and my phone ready to call the police the moment I saw anyone suspicious. I made it until 2 in the morning before exhaustion won, and I went to bed. When I woke up at 7, I looked out my window and felt my blood pressure spike. The mailbox was completely gone. Not knocked over, not broken. Gone. All that remained was the concrete base I had poured just a week earlier. I filed a police report that Monday. Officer Daniel Martinez came to my house, took some notes, looked around the neighborhood, and basically told me there was not much they could do without evidence or witnesses. He suggested I install a security camera. I thanked him and added security camera system to my growing list of expenses related to this nightmare. The camera was delivered 3 days later. It was a decent system with night vision, motion detection, and cloud storage for the footage. I spent an entire Saturday afternoon installing it, positioning it perfectly to capture anyone who came near my mailbox. I also installed the 5th mailbox, this time using a steel post set in 3 feet of concrete. If someone wanted to take this one down, they would need power tools or a vehicle. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Finally, I would catch whoever was doing this. Sunday morning, I woke up and immediately checked the camera footage on my phone. My heart sank. Someone had spray painted the camera lens black around 3 in the morning. The motion detection had triggered, but all I could see in the footage before the lens was covered was a dark figure wearing a hoodie. I could not make out any identifying features. The mailbox itself was untouched, probably because they had spent their time disabling my camera instead. I sat on my porch, staring at the vandalized camera, feeling utterly defeated. I had spent $300 on that security system. I cleaned the lens with paint thinner and adjusted the angle, but I knew they would just come back and do it again. That afternoon, Patricia Hendricks came walking down my driveway. She was wearing a white visor, khaki shorts, and a polo shirt with the Sunridge Heights HOA logo embroidered on it. She carried a clipboard, which was never a good sign. "Mr. Richardson," she called out as she approached. "I need to speak with you about several violations." I stood up from the porch steps, already exhausted by this conversation before it even started. "What violations, Patricia?" She consulted her clipboard with theatrical seriousness. "Your garbage cans were visible from the street past 8 a.m. this morning. That is a violation. Your front yard landscaping has several weeds that need to be addressed. That is a violation. And your mailbox has spray paint residue on the post from the vandalism incidents. The HOA standards require all structures to be maintained in pristine condition. That is also a violation." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. "Patricia, you cannot be serious. I am the victim here. Someone is repeatedly vandalizing my property, and you are giving me violations for it. The HOA standards do not make exceptions for circumstances, Mr. Richardson. Every homeowner agreed to maintain these standards when they purchased property in Sunridge Heights. I am simply doing my job." She tore off 3 violation notices from her clipboard and handed them to me. "You have 72 hours to address each violation. Have a nice day." She turned and walked away before I could respond. I looked down at the notices, each one threatening a $100 daily fine if I did not comply. I crumpled them in my fist and went inside, slamming the door harder than necessary. My neighbor, an older man named George who had lived in Sunridge Heights since the development was built, came over that evening. George was in his 70s, retired from teaching high school history, and one of the few reasonable people left in the neighborhood. He knocked on my door holding 2 beers from a local brewery. "Saw Patricia over here earlier," he said, handing me one of the beers. "Figured you could use this." We sat on my back patio and I vented about everything. The mailbox vandalism, the security camera, Patricia's violations, all of it. George listened patiently, nodding along and taking occasional sips of his beer. "You know who I think it is," George said after I finished. "Patricia's son and his friends." I nearly choked on my beer. "What?" "Her son, Brandon. He is 17, just finished his junior year at Desert Vista High School. He runs around with a group of kids from the neighborhood. I have seen them out late on weekends, causing trouble. Someone told me they were the ones who toilet papered the Johnsons' house last month." I set my beer down, processing this information. "You think Patricia's own son is vandalizing my mailbox?" George shrugged. "I am not saying I know for sure, but the timing seems right. This all started around the same time you filed that complaint about Patricia with the HOA board, did it not?" He was right. Back in early March, I had attended an HOA meeting to complain about Patricia's excessive enforcement of minor violations while ignoring actual problems in the neighborhood, like the broken streetlight on the corner that had been out for months. I had not been rude or aggressive, just pointed out that maybe the HOA should prioritize actual safety issues over measuring everyone's grass height. Patricia had not taken it well. She had dismissed my concerns and moved on to the next agenda item. The mailbox vandalism started the very next weekend. "You think this is retaliation?" I asked. "I think Patricia Hendricks is a vindictive woman who does not like being challenged, and I think her son knows exactly how to make someone's life miserable without getting caught. But like I said, I cannot prove anything." After George left, I sat alone on my patio, thinking through everything. If Brandon Hendricks and his friends were really behind this, then Patricia knew about it. She had to know. That would explain why she was so unsympathetic, why she kept hitting me with violations instead of helping me solve the problem. She was protecting her son while making my life hell in the process. I needed proof. But more than that, I needed to make this stop. The next morning, I drove to a craft store in Scottsdale called Creative Expressions. I wandered the aisles until I found what I was looking for: glitter. Not just regular glitter, but the finest, most diabolical craft herpes ever invented. I bought 20 jars of ultra-fine glitter in various colors: silver, gold, pink, blue, red, purple. I also bought a large Ziploc bags, heavy-duty tape, and a motion-activated air horn. Back at home, I carefully cleaned my mailbox and set up my trap. I poured all 20 jars of glitter into a large Ziploc bag, then positioned it inside the mailbox so that it would explode outward when the mailbox door was opened forcefully. I used tape to secure the bag in a way that would ensure maximum glitter dispersal. The motion-activated air horn I placed in the bushes near the mailbox, angled toward the street. I also reset my security camera after cleaning it thoroughly and adjusted the angle to capture a wider view. I made sure the lens was clean and the night vision was working properly. Then I waited. Friday night came and went without incident. Saturday morning, nothing. I started to think maybe they had moved on, found some other target for their weekend entertainment. But Saturday night, at approximately 2:45 in the morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Motion detected. Camera recording. Air horn activated. I jumped out of bed and pulled up the camera feed on my phone. The video quality was not perfect in the dark, but it was good enough. I could see 3 figures approaching my mailbox. They were wearing hoodies and dark clothes, but the streetlight provided just enough illumination to see what happened next. One of the figures, taller than the other 2, reached for the mailbox door and yanked it open with considerable force. There was a moment of confusion. Then an absolute explosion of glitter erupted from the mailbox, coating all three figures in a cloud of shimmering craft supplies. The air horn blared at the same time, and I could see them jumping back in shock. The taller figure stumbled and fell backward onto the street. The other two tried to run but slipped on the glitter that now covered the pavement. I watched in satisfaction as they scrambled to their feet, covered head to toe in glitter, and ran down the street toward the Hendricks house 3 doors down. Even in the dark, I could see the glitter sparkling under the streetlights as they fled. I saved the video to 3 different locations: my phone, the cloud storage, and a thumb drive. Then I went back to bed with a smile on my face for the first time in months. Sunday morning, I woke up early and walked outside to survey the damage. The mailbox was intact, which was a pleasant change. The street was covered in glitter, creating a shimmering path that led directly from my mailbox down the sidewalk and across several front lawns in the direction of the Hendricks house. It looked like a unicorn had exploded. I took several photos on my phone for documentation purposes. Around 9 in the morning, as I was drinking coffee on my front porch, I saw Patricia Hendricks storming down the sidewalk toward my house. She was moving fast, her face red with anger, and she was still wearing her bathrobe and slippers. Behind her, I could see Brandon Hendricks standing in their driveway, and even from this distance, I could see the glitter in his hair catching the morning sunlight. "Wesley Richardson," Patricia shouted as she marched up my driveway. "What have you done?" I took a sip of my coffee, keeping my expression neutral. "Good morning, Patricia. What seems to be the problem?" "You know exactly what the problem is. You booby-trapped your mailbox. That is illegal. My son and his friends are covered in glitter. They cannot get it off." I raised my eyebrows. "Your son and his friends? How would they have gotten glitter on them from my mailbox?" Patricia faltered for just a moment, realizing her mistake. They were walking past your house last night and your mailbox exploded glitter all over them." "Interesting," I said slowly. "So your son was walking past my house at, what time was it?" "Around 2:45 in the morning, on a Saturday night, and my mailbox just spontaneously exploded glitter." "Yes, that is exactly what happened." I pulled out my phone and opened the saved video. "Patricia, I have the whole thing on camera. Your son and 2 other teenagers opened my mailbox, triggering the glitter bomb I placed inside to catch whoever has been vandalizing my property for the past 3 months. Would you like to see the footage?" Her face went from red to pale in an instant. "You cannot. That is entrapment." "No, Patricia, it is not. Entrapment is when law enforcement induces someone to commit a crime they would not otherwise commit. This is me protecting my property from repeated vandalism. The glitter bomb was placed inside my private mailbox on my property. Your son and his friends had no legal reason to be opening my mailbox in the middle of the night." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "I will sue you." "For what?" "Your son has been committing a federal crime." Mailbox vandalism is a federal offense because it interferes with mail delivery. I have video evidence of 3 separate incidents now, saved in multiple locations. I also have documentation of all the money I have spent replacing my mailbox, all the police reports I have filed, and all the HOA violations you have sent me while knowing your son was responsible for the vandalism. The color drained completely from Patricia's face. "You have no proof I knew anything about this." "Maybe not proof that would hold up in court, but I have your son on camera. I have a trail of glitter leading directly to your house, and I have several months of you harassing me with violations while refusing to help address the vandalism problem. A decent lawyer could make a pretty compelling case that you were covering for your son while retaliating against me for challenging you at that HOA meeting." Patricia stood frozen on my driveway, her hands shaking slightly. For once, she had nothing to say. "Here is what is going to happen," I continued, keeping my voice calm and level. "Your son is going to come over here and apologize. He is going to reimburse me for every penny I spent replacing my mailbox and installing security equipment. That comes to approximately $1,200. He is also going to perform community service in the neighborhood, whatever tasks I and the other residents deem appropriate. In exchange, I will not press charges or send this video to the police." "That is blackmail," Patricia said weakly. "No, that is me giving your son a chance to take responsibility for his actions without getting a criminal record. If you prefer, I can send this video to Officer Martinez right now and let the justice system handle it. Federal charges, Patricia." "Is that what you want for Brandon?" She shook her head slowly, tears forming in her eyes. For the first time since I had known Patricia Hendricks, she looked defeated. "I will send him over this afternoon," she said quietly, then turned and walked back to her house. I sat back down on my porch and finished my coffee, feeling a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. The mailbox war was over, but I had a feeling the HOA drama was just beginning. Brandon Hendricks showed up at my door around 3 that afternoon. He had showered multiple times, but I could still see glitter in his hair and eyebrows. Glitter is eternal. He was accompanied by his 2 friends, both of whom I recognized from the neighborhood. One was Cody Walsh, whose parents lived 2 streets over, and the other was Tyler Martinez, who I realized with a start was Officer Martinez's son. The 3 of them stood on my porch looking miserable and embarrassed. Brandon spoke first. "Mr. Richardson, I am really sorry about your mailbox. We were just messing around, but it got out of hand. I will pay you back for everything." I crossed my arms, studying the 3 teenagers. They were just kids, really. Stupid kids who made stupid decisions, but kids nonetheless. I remembered being 17 and doing idiotic things for no good reason. The difference was I never cost anyone over $1,000 in property damage. "Why?" I asked. "Why my mailbox specifically?" Brandon shuffled his feet, not making eye contact. "My mom was really mad after that HOA meeting. She kept talking about you at home, saying you were trying to undermine her authority and turn the neighborhood against her. I guess I wanted to. I do not know, teach you a lesson or something. Make you regret challenging her." "So this was about your mother," I said. "Not about me at all," he nodded miserably. "I am really sorry, it was stupid." I sighed and stepped aside. "Come inside, we need to work out a payment plan and community service schedule." The 4 of us sat at my kitchen table, and I pulled out a spreadsheet I had prepared listing every expense related to the mailbox vandalism. 5 mailboxes at various prices, security camera system, cleaning supplies, paint thinner, the glitter bomb materials, everything. The total came to $1,237.42. "I do not have that kind of money," Brandon said, looking at the spreadsheet with wide eyes. "Then you are going to work it off. I spoke with several neighbors this morning after your mother left. Mrs. Chen needs her fence repainted. Mr. George wants his garage cleaned and organized. The Johnsons need yard work done. I calculated that if you 3 work every Saturday for the rest of the summer at minimum wage rates, you will have it paid off by September. Does that work for you?" The 3 boys looked at each other, then nodded. They did not have much choice. "There is one more thing," I said. "Tyler, your father is Officer Martinez. He came to my house and took a police report about the vandalism. Does he know you were involved?" Tyler's face went even paler. "No, sir. He works night shifts mostly. He did not know I was sneaking out." "Well, he is going to find out. I am not going to tell him, but you are. You are going to go home today and tell your father everything, If you do not, I will send him the video myself. Understood?" Tyler nodded, looking like he might be sick. I spent the next hour writing up a contract that outlined the payment plan, the community service requirements, and a clause stating that any future vandalism or harassment would result in me immediately turning over all evidence to the police. All 3 boys signed it, along with their parents when I required them to take copies home for parental signatures. Monday morning, I received an email from Patricia Hendricks in her official capacity as HOA president. The email was brief and formal, stating that all violations against my property had been rescinded and that the HOA would be implementing new neighborhood watch programs to prevent vandalism. She did not mention her son or the glitter bomb incident. She also did not apologize. I forwarded the email to George, who called me immediately, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "I heard about the glitter bomb from Margaret, the mail carrier. The whole neighborhood is talking about it. You are a legend, Wesley." "I just wanted the vandalism to stop," I said, but I could not help smiling. "Oh, it stopped all right. I saw Brandon and his friends out this morning cleaning up glitter from the street. There is still glitter everywhere. My granddaughter walked through some yesterday and tracked it into my house. It is never going away. You have marked them forever." Over the next few weeks, I watched as Brandon, Cody, and Tyler worked their way through the neighborhood, completing their community service tasks. They repainted Mrs. Chen's fence, which had been looking shabby for years. They cleaned and organized George's garage, a project he had been putting off for months. They did yard work for the Johnsons, the Patels, and the Crawfords. They cleaned out gutters, pulled weeds, and hauled away junk. The neighborhood response was mixed. Some people thought I had been too harsh, that boys would be boys and I should have just let it go. Others thought I had been more than fair, giving them a chance to make amends instead of pressing charges. Patricia Hendricks avoided me completely, which was fine by me. The best part was watching the boys actually develop some work ethic. By the 3rd Saturday, they were showing up on time, bringing their own tools and doing quality work without constant supervision. Tyler's father, Officer Martinez, stopped by my house one evening to thank me. "Tyler told me everything," he said, standing on my porch in his uniform. "I appreciate you giving him a chance to make it right instead of pressing charges. He is a good kid, just made some bad choices." "We all make bad choices at that age," I said. "The important thing is learning from them." Officer Martinez nodded. "The glitter was genius, by the way. He is still finding glitter in his room. My wife is not happy about it, but I think it is hilarious." By mid-July, the boys had worked off about half their debt. They had become a regular fixture in the neighborhood on Saturday mornings, and people started requesting their help with various projects. They started actually charging for additional work beyond the court-mandated community service, saving money for college and cars. It was almost wholesome. Then Patricia Hendricks tried to find me again. I received the violation notice on a Tuesday afternoon in late July. It stated that my unauthorized community service program was in violation of HOA regulations because I had not sought approval from the board before implementing a neighborhood work program. The fine was $500. I read the notice 3 times, convinced it had to be a joke. Patricia was actually trying to fine me for making her son do community service as restitution for vandalizing my property. The audacity was breathtaking. I called George immediately. "Patricia just sent me a violation notice about the community service." "You are kidding," George said. "Please tell me you are kidding." I wish I was. "She is claiming I need board approval for a neighborhood work program." George was quiet for a moment. "Wesley, I think it is time we dealt with Patricia once and for all. Can you come to my house tonight? I am inviting a few other neighbors. We need to talk." That evening, I walked to George's house and found his living room filled with neighbors. There were about 15 people there, including Mrs. Chen, the Johnsons, the Patels, and several others I recognized from neighborhood events. Everyone looked angry. George stood up and addressed the group. "Thank you all for coming. I think we all know why we are here. Patricia Hendricks has been abusing her power as HOA president for years, and it is time we did something about it." Mrs. Chen spoke up. "She fined me $300 last month because my rose bushes were touching my neighbor's property line by 2 inches. 2 inches. She threatened to sue me because my daughter's birthday party had too many cars parked on the street," Mr. Johnson added. "It was a child's birthday party." One by one, people shared their Patricia Hendricks horror stories. The picture that emerged was of a woman who had turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom, using violations and fines as weapons against anyone who disagreed with her. She had been doing it for years, and people had just accepted it because challenging her seemed too difficult. "The HOA bylaws allow for a vote of no confidence," George explained. "If we can get signatures from 30% of homeowners in Sunridge Heights, we can call for a special election to remove Patricia from the board and elect a new president. We have 250 homes in this neighborhood, so we need 75 signatures." "I will sign," I said immediately. "Me too," said Mrs. Chen. Around the room, everyone agreed. We organized ourselves into teams, dividing up the neighborhood streets. Over the next 2 weeks, we went door to door, explaining the situation and gathering signatures. The response was overwhelming. People were tired of Patricia's tyranny. Many had stories of their own about excessive fines, petty violations, and general harassment. By the first week of August, we had 123 signatures, well over the required threshold. George submitted the petition to the HOA board, which by law had to schedule a special election within 30 days. Patricia Hendricks lost her mind. She sent out a mass email to every homeowner in Sunridge Heights, claiming that we were staging an illegal coup, that the petition was invalid, that she was the victim of a conspiracy. The email was unhinged, full of capital letters and exclamation points, accusing me specifically of orchestrating a vendetta against her because of my criminal entrapment of her son. The email backfired spectacularly. People who had been on the fence about the recall were pushed firmly into our camp by Patricia's meltdown. The board, which consisted of 4 other members besides Patricia, unanimously agreed that the petition was valid and scheduled the election for August 28th. The campaign was brief but intense. Patricia tried to rally support, sending out daily emails defending her record and attacking me and George as troublemakers trying to destabilize the neighborhood. We kept our message simple. The HOA should serve the community, not rule it. We promised to focus on actual problems like street maintenance and safety, instead of measuring grass heights and counting seconds until trash cans were hidden. Brandon, Cody, and Tyler, surprisingly, stayed neutral. They continued their community service work, and when people asked them about the situation, they simply said it was between the adults. I appreciated their discretion. The election was held on a Saturday afternoon at the Sunridge Heights Community Center. The turnout was enormous, over 70% of eligible homeowners. George ran against Patricia for president, and 2 of our neighbors ran for the other board positions. Patricia showed up in a business suit, handing out flyers and shaking hands like she was running for Congress. I voted, then waited outside with the other neighbors. The ballot counting took about 2 hours. When the results were finally announced, George had won with 68% of the vote. The other two candidates from our group also won their races. Patricia Hendricks was no longer HOA president. She did not take it well. Patricia stormed out of the community center, got in her car, and drove away without speaking to anyone. I felt a moment of sympathy for her, then remembered the 3 months of hell she had put me through, and the sympathy evaporated. George's first act as the new HOA president was to rescind all pending violations issued by Patricia, including the ridiculous fine against my community service program. His second act was to form a committee to review and revise the HOA standards, eliminating the most petty and excessive rules. His third act was to organize a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the beginning of a new era in Sunridge Heights. The barbecue was held on Labor Day weekend. Nearly the entire neighborhood showed up, including Brandon, Cody, and Tyler, who by that point had finished their community service and fully paid back the money they owed. They had even cleaned up the last remnants of glitter from the street, though I suspected we would be finding sparkles in Sunridge Heights for years to come. I was manning the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs when Brandon approached me. He looked nervous. "Mr. Richardson, can I talk to you for a minute?" I handed the spatula to Mr. Johnson and stepped aside with Brandon. "What is on your mind?" "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, "for not pressing charges, for giving us a chance to make it right. I learned a lot this summer. About responsibility and consequences and all that. I start my senior year next week, and I am going to do better. Be better." I looked at this kid, this 17-year-old who 3 months ago had been systematically destroying my mailbox to please his mother, and saw genuine remorse and growth. "I appreciate you saying that, Brandon. What are your plans after graduation?" "I got accepted to Arizona State, going to study business management, maybe learn how to run an organization better than my mom did." He smiled weakly at his own joke. "That is a good goal," I said. "And Brandon, your mother is not a bad person. She just lost her way. Hopefully this whole experience will help her find it again." Brandon nodded. "She has been pretty quiet since the election. I think she is embarrassed, but maybe you are right. Maybe this will help her." After Brandon walked away, George came over and handed me a beer. "Hell of a summer, huh?" "That is putting it mildly," I said, taking a long drink. "The new board met yesterday. We are implementing some changes. Streamlining the violation process, focusing on actual problems instead of cosmetic nitpicking. We also voted to install security cameras at all the neighborhood entrances and improve the street lighting. You know, things that actually help the community." "Sounds like you are doing a good job already." George clinked his beer against mine. "Could not have done it without you and your glitter bomb. You know that is going to be a neighborhood legend forever, right? 20 years from now, people will still be telling the story of the Great Mailbox War of 2026. I laughed. "I can think of worse legacies." As the sun set over Sunridge Heights and the neighborhood gathered together, eating and talking and actually enjoying each other's company without fear of HOA violations, I felt something I had not felt in months: contentment. My mailbox was intact. The vandalism had stopped. Patricia's reign of terror was over. And 3 teenage boys had learned valuable lessons about accountability and hard work. The whole experience had taught me something too. Sometimes the best response to petty tyranny is not anger or resignation, but creative problem-solving and community organizing. The glitter bomb had solved my immediate problem, but it was the collective action of fed-up neighbors that had solved the real problem. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Officer Martinez. "Tyler wanted me to tell you he is thinking about becoming a police officer after college. Says he learned about justice and second chances from you. Thanks for that." I smiled and pocketed my phone. The mailbox war had cost me time, money, and considerable frustration, but it had also brought the neighborhood together and helped 3 kids get their lives on track. In the end, that was worth every penny and every sparkle of glitter. September arrived, and Brandon, Cody, and Tyler started their senior year of high school. I saw them occasionally on weekends, still doing yard work around the neighborhood, but now they were charging for their services and had built up a regular client base. They had even given their business a name, Second Chance Services. I thought it was appropriate. Patricia Hendricks stayed in Sunridge Heights, but she was much quieter now. She attended a few HOA meetings in the fall, sitting in the back row and not saying much. George, to his credit, tried to include her in committees and discussions, recognizing her years of service even if her methods had been problematic. She gradually started to thaw, though she still avoided direct contact with me. In October, the neighborhood held its annual Halloween party. The Sunridge Heights Halloween celebration was traditionally a big event, with decorated houses, a costume contest, and trick-or-treating routes planned out for maximum candy efficiency. Under Patricia's presidency, the event had been rigidly controlled, with strict rules about decorations, noise levels, and approved costume themes. Under George's leadership, it was much more relaxed and fun. I dressed up as a mailman, which got a lot of laughs from neighbors who understood the reference. My costume included a mail bag filled with glitter bombs made of clear plastic ornaments filled with craft glitter. They were just props, but the joke landed well. Brandon showed up to the party dressed as a glitter explosion, with craft supplies glued all over his clothes and face paint creating a rainbow effect. His self-deprecating humor earned him respect from the neighbors who had been hardest on him earlier in the summer. Cody came as a mailbox, wearing a cardboard box painted blue with a little red flag attached, and Tyler dressed as a police officer, which was fitting given his career aspirations. The 3 of them had grown up considerably over the summer. They helped organize the kids' activities, set up the haunted house in the community center, and generally made themselves useful. It was nice to see. Around 9 o'clock, as the party was winding down, Patricia Hendricks approached me. I had not spoken to her directly since the morning after the glitter bomb incident. She looked uncomfortable but determined. "Wesley, can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded and followed her to a quieter corner of the community center. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Several apologies, actually. I was wrong about the mailbox situation. I knew Brandon was involved, but I did not want to believe my son could do something like that. So I blamed you instead. I convinced myself you were the problem, that you were trying to make me look bad. The truth is, I was making myself look bad. I let the power go to my head. I forgot that the HOA is supposed to serve the community, not control it." I was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "I appreciate you saying that, Patricia. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. I am also sorry for all the violations I sent you. You were right at that meeting back in March. The HOA was focused on the wrong things. I was focused on the wrong things. George is doing a better job than I ever did." "You did some good things too," I said, surprising myself by defending her. "The neighborhood looked nice under your leadership. You just took it too far. It happens." Patricia smiled sadly. "Brandon told me what you said to him at the barbecue. About me not being a bad person, just losing my way. I have thought about that a lot. I think you are right. I did lose my way, but I am trying to find it again." "That is all any of us can do," I said. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, then Patricia extended her hand. I shook it, and just like that, the war was officially over. As November rolled into December, life in Sunridge Heights settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new HOA board implemented changes gradually, getting feedback from residents before making decisions. Violations dropped by over 80%, and the ones that were issued focused on legitimate safety and maintenance concerns, rather than petty aesthetic complaints. George organized monthly community meetings where residents could voice concerns and suggestions. Attendance was high, and people actually seemed to enjoy participating in neighborhood governance. It was a far cry from Patricia's regime, where meetings had been sparsely attended rubber stamp sessions for her decisions. The street lighting improvements were completed in early December, making the neighborhood safer for evening walks. The security cameras at the neighborhood entrances went live shortly after, and they actually caught someone trying to steal packages from porches. Officer Martinez arrested the suspect within hours of the incident. The cameras were working exactly as intended, protecting the community rather than spying on residents. Brandon, Cody, and Tyler continued their yard work business into the winter months, transitioning to services like gutter cleaning, holiday light installation, and winterizing outdoor equipment. They had saved enough money that all three were able to buy used cars, and they were making plans for college. Brandon was definitely going to Arizona State. Cody had been accepted to Northern Arizona University, and Tyler was considering staying local and going to community college while applying to police academies. On Christmas Eve, the neighborhood held a caroling event followed by hot chocolate and cookies at the community center. Nearly everyone attended, including Patricia, who seemed more relaxed than I had seen her in years. She was chatting with Mrs. Chen about gardening, of all things, and actually laughing at something Mr. Johnson said. It was nice to see her being a normal neighbor instead of the HOA enforcer. As I stood there, drinking spiked hot chocolate and listening to slightly off-key renditions of classic carols, I reflected on the absurd journey that had brought us to this point. 6 months ago, I had been at war with unknown vandals, being harassed by an overzealous HOA president, and seriously considering moving out of Sunridge Heights entirely. Now, I was part of a thriving, functional community where people actually liked each other and worked together to solve problems. All because of a mailbox and some glitter, George found me near the refreshment table and raised his mug in a toast. To Wesley Richardson, the man who saved Sunridge Heights with craft supplies, I laughed and clinked my mug against his. I did not save anything. The community saved itself. I just gave it a push in the right direction. A very sparkly push, George said with a grin. As the new year approached, I found myself genuinely excited about the future of our neighborhood. The mailbox war had been frustrating and expensive, but it had also revealed problems that needed addressing and brought people together to fix them. It had given 3 teenage boys a chance to learn from their mistakes and grow into responsible young men. It had even helped Patricia Hendricks rediscover her humanity and become a contributing member of the community instead of its dictator. On New Year's Day, I was outside checking my mail when Brandon drove past in his used Honda. He honked and waved, and I waved back. The mailbox stood solid and undamaged, its steel post gleaming in the Arizona sun. I opened the mailbox door carefully, half expecting another prank, but inside was just the usual assortment of bills and junk mail. Plus, one unexpected envelope. I opened it and found a handwritten note from Brandon. "Mr. Richardson, I just wanted to thank you again for everything. I start ASU in a few weeks, and I am actually excited about it. My mom is doing better too. She joined a book club and started volunteering at the library. I think losing the HOA presidency was the best thing that could have happened to her, even if she did not see it that way at first. Anyway, I am rambling. I just wanted you to know that the glitter bomb changed my life, in a good way. I learned that actions have consequences, but also that people can be surprisingly generous with second chances. Thank you for being one of those people. Brandon. I folded the note and put it in my pocket, feeling genuinely moved. The kid had come a long way from the hoodie-wearing vandal who destroyed mailboxes to impress his mother. That evening, the new HOA board held its first meeting of the new year. I attended, along with about 40 other residents. George outlined the goals for 2027, continuing the infrastructure improvements, organizing more community events, and establishing a neighborhood scholarship fund for graduating high school seniors. Patricia was there, serving on the beautification committee, offering suggestions about landscaping improvements that were actually reasonable and well received. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to share their own mailbox stories. Apparently, my experience had inspired others to take creative approaches to neighborhood problems. Mrs. Chen had dealt with someone letting their dog poop in her yard by installing a sprinkler system with motion sensors. The Johnsons had handled a dispute with a neighbor over a fence by organizing a mediation session instead of letting it escalate. People were solving problems through creativity and communication instead of complaints and conflict. As February arrived, I realized it had been almost a full year since the mailbox vandalism began. My steel mailbox remained intact, a monument to perseverance and the transformative power of ultra-fine glitter. I had spent more on that mailbox than any reasonable person should spend on such a mundane object, but it had become a symbol of something larger. The idea that regular people can stand up to petty tyrants and unreasonable situations, that communities can change for the better, and that even teenage vandals can learn and grow. Officer Martinez stopped by my house in late February with an update. Thought you would want to know, Tyler got accepted to the police academy in Phoenix. He starts in June, right after graduation. He says you are part of the reason he chose this career path. That is great news, I said, genuinely pleased. He is going to make a good cop. Better than his old man, Martinez said with a laugh. He already has better judgment than I did at his age. Which reminds me, the department wanted me to thank you for the creative approach to the vandalism problem. We have started recommending glitter bombs to other property crime victims. Non-toxic, non-dangerous, but incredibly effective and basically permanent. It is genius. I had not considered that my solution might become an official police recommendation, but it made sense. The glitter bomb had been effective precisely because it was harmless but unforgettable. No one got hurt, but everyone involved would remember the experience for the rest of their lives. In March, exactly 1 year after the mailbox war began, the neighborhood held a celebration marking the anniversary of the new HOA board. George insisted on calling it the Glitter Revolution Anniversary, which I thought was overdramatic, but everyone else seemed to love. The party featured glitter-decorated cupcakes, glitter art projects for kids, and even glitter cannons that went off at sunset, showering the community center parking lot in biodegradable, eco-friendly sparkles. Brandon, Cody, and Tyler were there, preparing for their graduations in a few months. They gave a short speech about their community service experience, talking about the lessons they had learned and encouraging younger kids to make better choices than they had. It was surprisingly eloquent and well received. Patricia attended the celebration too, and she even approached the microphone to speak. A year ago, I would have seen this party as a personal attack, a celebration of my failure as HOA president. But I have learned a lot this year, mostly by watching George and the new board succeed where I failed. I learned that leadership is about service, not control, about building up, not tearing down, about admitting when you are wrong and working to do better. I am grateful to this community for teaching me those lessons, even though I fought against them at first. Thank you for the second chance. The crowd applauded, and I saw several people wiping away tears. Patricia had come a long way from the tyrannical HOA president, who sent violation notices for grass that was a quarter-inch too tall. As spring turned to summer, I watched Brandon, Cody, and Tyler graduate from Desert Vista High School. All three gave me invitations to their graduation parties, which I attended with small gifts and genuine pride in how far they had come. Brandon was heading to Arizona State as planned, Cody to Northern Arizona University, and Tyler to the police academy. Their second chance services business was being taken over by younger teenagers in the neighborhood who wanted to earn money, continuing the tradition. The mailbox stood undamaged through it all, a silent witness to the transformation of Sunridge Heights. Occasionally, I would catch people taking photos of it, tourists who had heard the story of the glitter bomb and wanted to see the famous mailbox in person. It became a minor local legend, the mailbox that ended a war and changed a neighborhood. In July, I received a letter from the Arizona HOA Association, asking me to speak at their annual conference about effective conflict resolution in homeowners associations. Apparently, word had spread about the Sunridge Heights situation, and other HOAs were interested in learning from our experience. I agreed, and in August, I stood before a room of 300 HOA board members from across the state, telling the story of the mailbox war and its aftermath. The presentation was well received, and several people approached me afterward to share their own HOA horror stories and ask for advice. I told them what I had learned, that HOAs work best when they serve rather than rule, that people respond better to community engagement than punishment, and that sometimes the best solution to a problem is creative, unexpected, and involves craft supplies. George instituted several of our neighborhood innovations into the state HOA Best Practices Guide, including streamlined violation processes, regular community input sessions, and focusing enforcement on safety rather than aesthetics. Sunridge Heights became a model for functional HOA governance, and George was invited to consult with struggling HOAs across Arizona. As October arrived, and the weather finally cooled down from the brutal Arizona summer, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in 18 months. The mailbox that had caused so much frustration had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change throughout the entire community. Brandon had grown from a vandal into a responsible college student. Patricia had transformed from a tyrant into a valued community member. The neighborhood had gone from fearfully following arbitrary rules to actively participating in shared governance. And I had gone from an angry, frustrated homeowner at war with unknown vandals to a respected community leader, an inadvertent expert on HOA conflict resolution. It was not a journey I had expected or wanted, but I was grateful for it nonetheless. The mailbox still stands today, steel and concrete, unmarked by vandalism or glitter. Sometimes I open it and half expect another prank, but there never is one. Just bills, catalogs, and the occasional handwritten note from Brandon, Cody, or Tyler, updating me on their lives and thanking me again for the second chance I gave them. People sometimes ask me if I regret the glitter bomb, if I think it was an overreaction to a relatively minor problem. I always tell them no. The glitter bomb was not about revenge or punishment. It was about solving a problem creatively when conventional solutions had failed. It was about catching vandals in the act and giving them a harmless but memorable consequence. Most importantly, it was about creating an opportunity for change, growth, and redemption. Would I recommend glitter bombs to everyone dealing with vandalism? Probably not. But I would recommend thinking creatively about problems, standing up to petty tyranny, and giving people chances to make amends when they make mistakes. Those lessons are universal, even if the method of delivery was uniquely sparkly. As I write this, sitting on my porch on a cool November evening, I can see neighbors walking their dogs, kids playing basketball in driveways, and people actually talking to each other instead of avoiding eye contact for fear of HOA violations. The streetlights George installed illuminate the neighborhood beautifully, and the security cameras at the entrance provide peace of mind without being intrusive. My mailbox stands at the end of my driveway, solid and dependable, no longer a target but a symbol. A reminder that even the most frustrating problems can be solved with creativity, determination, and yes, sometimes a little bit of glitter. It reminds me that communities can change, people can grow, and second chances are worth giving. The glitter is long gone from the streets of Sunridge Heights, though I suspect we will be finding stray sparkles in random places for years to come. But the lessons remain. Stand up for yourself, engage your community, solve problems creatively, and never underestimate the power of ultra-fine craft supplies to change lives. My name is Wesley Richardson. I live at 428 Saguaro Drive in Sunridge Heights, Arizona. And I won the mailbox war with 20 jars of glitter and a willingness to fight back against petty tyranny. It is not the legacy I expected, but it is one I am proud of. The mailbox stands undamaged, the neighborhood thrives, and somewhere in Arizona, 3 young men are building better lives because someone gave them a second chance and a face full of glitter they will never forget. That is how a simple mailbox became the catalyst for transforming an entire community, how craft supplies became instruments of justice, and how standing up to an unreasonable HOA president led to positive change that rippled through hundreds of lives. It started with vandalism and ended with redemption, and all it took was creativity, community support, and the understanding that sometimes the best solutions are the ones nobody sees coming. The mailbox war taught me that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences in their communities, that young people deserve chances to learn from their mistakes, and that even the most entrenched problems can be solved with the right combination of determination and glitter. Those are lessons I will carry with me forever, long after the last sparkle of glitter has finally disappeared from Sunridge Heights.